Hello, this is Virtualis a chess noob, learning and having fun with chess. Welcome to another episode of Chess Noob Game Reviews, where we look at a game to see how it could have been improved. Today we're going to have another look at the Giraffe Attack, and specifically where black responds with knight f6, the best response. Please enjoy. The Giraffe Attack is available in the Anderson defense of the Vienna game. So the Vienna game, of course, is e4, e5, knight c3. And the Anderson defense is when the bishop immediately comes out in response. So bishop c5. The Giraffe Attack is now the super aggressive queen to g4, immediately, placing pressure on the g7 pawn, taking advantage of the fact that the bishop has come out and no longer defending that pawn. We're basically asking the question, why is the bishop there? Now, the Giraffe Attack is a bit of a bluff because the queen cannot, in fact, take the g7 square, the g7 pawn right away, especially if the opponent plays the best move, which is knight to f6. This looks like it is hanging the g7 pawn, but it actually isn't. And if anything, it's kind of a trap for baby giraffes, because if you got greedy and you decided to gobble, what can happen is the following line. So if you take, the rook comes across, attacking the queen, defended by the knight. Queen can't take that pawn either because it's also defended. And of course, the knight itself is defended by the queen. So the queen can no longer stay on the g-file. In fact, there's only one square left for it to go, and it's forced to the h6 square. And now black has the absolutely brilliant move. Bishop captures pawn on f2, and if you don't see the trap and take back with the king, the knight now jumps forward, forking the queen and king, and you lose your queen and black wins. So that is a potential line. If if you decide to take with the queen, you just cannot do that. Now the best move here immediately is to park the queen onto the g3 square. And and the immediate logic is to place pressure on the e5 pawn, and if you're allowed to, capture with check, which of course forks the bishop, and the queen keeps an eye on that g7 pawn. One of the tactics and strategies of this early queen to the g-file move is that even though the queen cannot take the g7 pawn right away, once it has some backup, it can, and it's a real true threat. Now here, because I'm attacking that pawn, the opponent, black, must do something to defend. And so they develop their other knight. That makes a lot of sense. I now develop my bishop to c4. And here, my opponent makes a blunder. So they play in a very sort of natural Italianesque way with a d6. And this is actually a blunder. So if you look at Stockfish, they call it sort of minus 2.5. And the reason for that is that this pawn can now be captured once the bishop has gone to this square. So what might that look like? Queen captures. This no longer works because this is now a true scholar's mate threat. And in fact, that would be mate. So they cannot do that. They would have to play the rook to this square to defend that pawn, and it's not looking good for the opponent. So here, white has a very substantial advantage and black is in some trouble. Now, I didn't see that, and neither did my opponent. And so if we actually have a look at the review, you will see that this is the bit where you see this bouncing up and down. We each make a blunder, blunder back, blunder back, blunder back, make mistakes with some undulations, and basically we do that for 7 consecutive turns, where I don't, take and attack the g7 pawn, and my opponent doesn't do anything to defend it either. So we make some sort of shuffling sort of moves. Here they sort of attack that pawn. That looks like a good idea. So I decide to retreat my bishop back to defend. But here I could have just taken. Bishop. I ask what they're doing with their bishop. They go back. I now decide to attack that knight, get rid of it. They attack. I take. queen out, and once the queen is in the f6 square, we've got that powerful queen's knight to d5. This is part of one of the general themes of the Vienna game, and basically it's very bad for black because I'm attacking the queen, also the c7 square, which comes with an absolute fork, the king and rook. They're going to have to do something. They move the queen all the way back, but now I finally see on move 12 that that is just hanging. It's soft. I take. My opponent sees that a potential scholar's mate is coming, so brings a rook here to defend the f7 pawn. But now, knight with a lovely fork. There we go. And basically I win that bishop. I think here my opponent was a bit flustered, so they thought, oh yes, look, I've got that fork myself. But of course the c2 square is defended by my bishop. So I took, and here they opted to resign, and their position is pretty hopeless. According to Stockfish, it's almost +10. Good game, GG. The big takeaway from this game is that understanding the strategic and tactical ideas in an opening is an important step in improving. I hope you enjoyed this video, and thanks for watching.